I went to go hit the flashlight, and before I hit the flashlight, I noticed a pair of eyes. They were illuminated without having to be hit with a light. They were so far apart, and they were so high up. These eyes had to have been about 14 inches apart. We're starting to get this really intense feeling of fear. I throw my gun up over the edge of these windows, and I hit the light. What I saw was so black, it consumed my light.
This is the Cryptid Creature Show. I am Brian, and with me as always, my co-host Todd. What's up, buddy?
Brian, my friend, we have a great guest coming on tonight. Tonight we're bringing on Cody. Cody's seen a couple things. He's seen a Bigfoot and I think a dog man.
Ooh, dog man. There's always good encounters.
I know. We haven't had one in a while, or we've had a few, so we're going to bring this on and talk to Cody. Let's not waste any time. You ready to bring him on?
Yep, let's get him. Hey, Cody, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Thanks for being here with us today, Cody.
Of course.
You had sent us an email. We appreciate that, reaching out to us, and said you had some strange property that you had hunted on, or you hunt on now.
Yeah. So a friend of my dad's that he's worked with for a long time. My dad's in the tech field and has been for about 40 years, almost 50 at this point. Basically, there is a pretty well-known lake tributary river that a lot of people fish, has really good hunting on it. Just for reference, I'm from Northwest Arkansas, was born and raised. That kind of spans all the way from Bella Vista kind of over to Gravette and all the way down past Fayetteville, all the way pretty much to Fort Smith. They consider Northwest Arkansas. So this happens around a town called Elkins. It's kind of a farming community, and this large river runs through a lot of Northwest Arkansas and empties into Beaver Lake. So we got hunting access there probably close to 10 years ago. And the way the property is set up is there's a highway, which highway, considering a 2-lane road. And then there's a dirt road that separates the properties, and the dirt road runs parallel to the river. We have to cross the river, like we have to get waders on or get down to our skivvies and cross, and then go on to the other field. Where most of the odd things have happened have actually been kind of more towards the highway side. It's kind of laid out weird. But the very first time I stepped foot on that property, immediately felt like I was being watched. Never really have had that. I've had that in some other places. I've had some other strange things happen. But in that one particular property, it just always felt like I was being watched, and not really in a menacing kind of way, not in a threatening kind of way. At least not yet. And at that time. So kind of fast forward, I think we got that probably in 2015. Got access to that. Nothing really strange ever occurred until 2020. The kind of the first strange thing that had happened was October of 2020. Me and my buddy Jacob, we've been friends for a while. We decided that, hey, it's 2020. I was working in corrections at the time. I was living in Texarkana, not too far from Falk, with the Falk monster. Never did see him down there though. But we decided, hey, I've been working through this whole thing. We're going to take a little vacation. We were going to try to go to New Mexico. That ended up not happening because of travel restrictions. So we decided, hey, we've got this property that I have access to. Contacted landowner, said, hey, are you good if we come out there and just, kind of goof around, right? Shoot some guns, and just have a good time, right? Camp, fish, maybe do a little bit of pig hunting because they're, wild hogs. And they, I think 1 year cost the farmer who hazed that field $250,000 in damages to his equipment. So we go, we take, backpacks, a couple guns, and we go across the river. Me and my dad had built a blind. It's about 8 foot tall, and it can sit 3 people comfortably side by side by side. It has 3 sliding windows in the front, and then 2 sliding windows, 1 on each side, and then a door and a deck on the rear. So yeah, it's a nice little, it's like a half cabin is what I'd call it. But my dad's like in his 60s, so he'll go sit under a tree occasionally, but on those cold mornings he fires up that heater and he sits in that blind. So it overlooks a field on that riverside. It overlooks a field. The field's kind of shaped like a kidney bean. We're facing east, and the west is directly to our backs. And you're kind of looking at that bend, kind of that flat top bend, side of the field, and it's surrounded by bamboo. We have a lot of like bamboo, like river cane that surrounds pretty much this entire river. So on each side, it's kind of capped in bamboo, or river cane, whatever you want to call it. It's thick. I mean, there's not many animals that can go through it without leaving a trail. But in front of us, that flat spot is kind of just it's kind of a wood line, and then we're sitting on the other wood line. So wood line, and kind of capped in bamboo. So 1 or 2 days goes by. I think it was on day 2, where we kind of had our first kind of wild encounter. We had sighted in some AR rifles out to about 250 yards with just some red dots. So no magnified optic, just red dots. We were hitting a 3-inch steel plate at 250 yards consistently, using just some regular like 55 grain ball ammo. Basically, we got to where we were hitting some pretty small targets from pretty far distances with those rifles and got really comfortable with them. So we were like, hey, cool, that night, let's stay up a little bit, see if we can catch some hogs in the field. Farmer said, hey, shoot as many of them as you can. I said, okay, I can do that. Nothing. I think at that time I was probably 20. Oh, I guess it's 24. Yeah, so I was 20. I was 24 years old. I'm 28 just recently. And so we stayed up a little bit. It got dark around 7 o'clock, if I'm not mistaken. We stayed up till about 11. Didn't really see much. Saw a deer kind of at one end of the field by itself. Eye shine was regular on that guy. But about 3 o'clock, we'd gone to sleep. About 3 o'clock, Jacob and I actually had woken up at the exact same time, and just looked at each other. It was kind of wild. Nothing bumped, nothing made noise, nothing. We just sat up. I'm like, okay, well maybe we're sensing that there's like some hogs in the field or something, right? So we kind of get up, we get sat in our chairs, and I had slid the windows open, and when I went to go hit the flashlight, I had a handheld flashlight, and we had some on our rifles, some tactical lights on our rifles. I went to go hit the flashlight, and before I hit the flashlight, I noticed to my right, kind of where the bamboo meets the wood line, which is about 250, 260 yards away, I noticed a pair of eyes, but they were illuminated without having to be hit with a light. So I thought. So I kind of had seen them and hit the light at the same time. I was like, well, maybe my brain just kind of lagged there, right? And they actually illuminated after I hit the button, but I don't know. So I turned it off, and I turned it back on really quick, and it basically did a reflection, and they weren't illuminated whenever the light was off. But I swear, I know that they were illuminated before I hit the light the first time. But the other thing about these eyes were they were so far apart, and they were so high up. I had made a comment to Jake. I said, do you see that? And he goes, yeah, I see it. And I said, dude, those eyes are so far apart. I was like, and he was like, dude, it's tall. I was like, I know. I was like, dude, that's not a deer. And so I was thinking, okay, well, we have a lot of bear. We actually have an event called Black Bear Bonanza that happens every year to celebrate the history of black bears in Arkansas. So I'm like, okay, cool. But there's no way. There's no way. Some of the biggest bears that have been killed here are like 400 pounds, but their skulls are still relatively small. They're not very large. And these eyes, I estimated these eyes, and Jacob agrees, these eyes had to have been about 14 inches apart. So a substantial distance apart. And anyway, so we're kind of chattering back and forth about what we should do, because we're starting to get this really intense feeling of fear. I worked in corrections. Jacob spent a lot of times in the woods and has grown up he had to grow up quick. I'll put it that way. So there's not much that could really scare either of us. And we both kind of were pretty fearful. So I'm like, I think we should shoot it, which may or may not always be the answer. But I kind of had yelled first, saying, hey, if that's a person, we're going to fire these guns in your direction, because we were actually starting to get really worried. That it was almost like something was bobbing its head. How dogs kind of will, if they don't understand something, they'll move their head up and down and left and right. So I tried to rule out, okay, it's a person with, a filtered light, holding them by their hands, far apart, trying to spook us. I ran through okay, maybe it's two different critters in a tree on each side. But the light that I have on my gun is really good, and I hadn't really thought about using it. But it will hit 300 yards, no problem, in an illuminated target. It's very bright. It's made to make people incapacitated if you're in a room with them. And so I throw my gun up over the edge of these windows, and I hit the light. And the only thing that I can describe to you is that what I saw was so black, it consumed my light. Everything around it was lit up. I could see where it was standing, but I could not see it. It was like it literally consumed the light that was being shot at it. Eyes were still shining. The eyes were probably the most vibrant yellow-green I've ever seen in my life. Almost just like straight yellow is how I'd have to describe them. And I've been in the woods a long time. I mean, probably since I was 3 years old. I've seen some other weird stuff, but nothing ever like this. So I just said, 1, 2, 3, shoot. And we shot at it. Eyes go away. Not a sound, not anything running away. But Jacob and I both agree that we heard the concussion, the report of the rifle hitting whatever we shot at. Like, you could hear the round actually hitting whatever we just shot at. And it wasn't like, I know what it sounds like hitting a tree, and I know what it sounds like hitting a deer, and I know what it sounds like hitting some other critters, coyotes. Originally, I wondered if it was a coyote in a tree, because occasionally coyotes will get themselves up in a tree chasing something. We heard it. So we're like, two idiots, let's get down and go try to find it. We were like, if we both just hit it with the rounds that we were shooting, it's down, or severely hurt. To kind of put into perspective also, there has been a string of random deer carcasses and stuff being found. And so some people, speculate. We have a thing called the Ozark Howler. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that or not. So we're, we don't know what we're thinking, right? And my goal is to never hurt anything out in the woods that I'm not going to eat. That's the way I was raised. If you're not going to eat it, don't hurt it. But the overmounting feel of fear that we had, kind of, I was like, well, we're going to shoot whatever this is. I'll deal with the consequences of it later. So we go across the field. It's like a 250-yard walk. It was not very illuminated that night. It was probably a new moon, if I had to take a guess. I mean, there was almost zero visibility. We go across. We're looking exactly where this thing is standing, and nothing. I know I could see, I could kind of tell the distance of which it was in the tall grass right before you get into the tree line. And I'm looking, and there's not anything bent over. There's one small game trail, but it's probably 10 inches wide. I mean, it's big enough for a human to walk single file through. We're looking, no blood, no hair, nothing. Like, it had just disappeared. But we both saw the outline of it. So I said, okay. I don't remember if I stood there or if Jacob stood there. One of us walked back while the other one held up like a I think it was a chem light, like a like a glow stick. And we held it up as high as, I think it was actually Jacob, because I don't think I could reach high enough. So he held it up and I walked back. And by the time I had walked back and had him hold it where it was about 7.5, almost 8 foot high. And then we kind of did the whole, how far away were the eyes? And they were about 14 inches. So, and the shine that I got back was unusual too. It wasn't like, it was almost like a perfect silhouette of the shine. It wasn't like starbursting or anything like that. It was almost as if you had put a light behind something and it was glowing. There was not really much deviation there. So that was the first odd encounter I had. We never found any blood. We went out the next morning and looked. We looked all over. We looked. We did find one spot where it looked like something like really large had laid down, and they don't ever put cattle in this field, so I'd know it wasn't a cow. And it wouldn't have been a lost cow either. There's no way one could get in there. But I did find where something very, very large had laid, but I didn't find any footprints. The other thing about that night also was the entire time that we had stayed up before we went to bed, and then got awoken at that early time in the morning, there was no birds. There was no, there was that one deer, but there was no raccoons. Which we have corn out there, so they're out there every night. No, without fail. I have a trail cam out there. They're out there every night. No coons, no squirrels, no critters, no coyotes, no birds, which was very odd to me. As a hunter, that when you're in the woods and stuff like that happens, there's a predator around. And we do have mountain lions out there. And that was one of the other things that we had talked about, that maybe this was. The Arkansas Game and Fish will deny every single day that there are not mountain lions here. But people have them on the trail cams. I have them on trail cams in Bella Vista. There was actually one in Rogers, Arkansas, which is a pretty heavily populated area. Bentonville is the home of Walmart, and just south of there is Rogers. And they have some key Fortune 500 companies that have home offices there too. So it's a pretty suburban area. And a lady had one laying in her driveway.
Why? Sorry. Why would they deny that? Why wouldn't they let the public know? That would be a public safety issue.
It is a public safety issue, but they don't want to put out the resources to make programs to hunt them. They just there's a lot that goes into that, and I can see where their reservation would be. Hey, like, we don't have trackable populations. And to be fair, most of the game camera pictures I see are all of the same male. So, from Bella Vista to almost Fayetteville, it seems like all the ones I see, it's almost the same individual. You can tell he's got a pretty unique kind of scar towards his back left hip. So you can kind of tell it may be the same guy. And I know that they probably are, they follow their food. So I think that as Northwest Arkansas begins to populate more and more and more, it's exploded since I was a kid. It's unreal. It's unrecognizable. They put like 100 miles of bike trails between Bentonville and Bella Vista, which are touching cities. They put 100 trails or 100 miles worth of single track mountain biking trails through the woods there, which has disrupted the hunting in Bella Vista because you could archery hunt in Bella Vista. And now they made, you can't hunt within 500 yards of a bike trail. Well, that's everybody's backyard. So, the hunting there has diminished. So I think that as that happens, you're going to see mountain bikers start getting attacked. Stuff chasing them on bluff lines, ambushing them from above. I really think you're going to start seeing that more and more. And that is something that I couldn't wish upon anybody. But it is a concern.
Let's talk about this creature real quick that you saw first. You had made a comment about when you shine the light on this creature, that it kind of absorbed the light. We've heard that before with Dogman encounters and the yellow eyes as well. Do you think it was a Dogman that you saw?
Wholeheartedly, I do. I have been in proximity to a Sasquatch before. I know for sure. And I did not feel threatened. I felt worried, but I had never felt threatened. And I'll get into that story a little bit later. But that happened at my ex-wife, who actually just passed away this last week. It happened at her parents' house. That encounter was something in particular that I'll never forget as well. But I will say that the creature that I saw, I chalked it up to being a Dogman or some kind of a Native American entity. Because fast forward 2 years, I don't know exactly how this burial ground got found, and I won't put the location out there where this property is because it is already upset. I don't know how. I don't remember if the landowner was going to build something there and he got the ground sonogrammed, or exactly what happened. But there is a mass, like 40 plus skeletons burial ground on this property. So from what I've been told, this property is right by the river. So that makes a lot of sense for me. But I think at one point that a group of somebody, I think that he said that it was the university that's kind of close to us, University of Arkansas, if I'm not mistaken, had came out and were going to do a dig. But when your equipment fails, your electronics fail, your hydraulic systems fail, and everything starts failing, I would probably take that as a don't dig here sign. And that is actually when everything went crazy. So I think it was actually maybe only a year after. Let's see, 21. Actually, no, I think it may have only been a year since that, that they started to try to dig. Now, fast forward to probably, I'd say, August of 21. Jacob and I, we like to try to be prepared for any scenario, whether we have to help other people in a crisis event, or we just want to be ready to go serve, whether that be here or overseas, if we're called to do so. So we do a lot of stuff where we put on plate carriers and take rifles, and we go rucking and we go running and all that kind of stuff. So we decided to do what we would consider a mock road patrol, where we're just going to walk down this county dirt road in gear, and do it with no lights. So we're going to walk in during the twilight hours in the evening and come out in the night, which was, after what we saw, I don't know why we ever thought that was a great idea. we're like, oh, we have guns, so it'll be fine. Which obviously that didn't help the first time. So anyways, we were walking basically the road that this property is around, off of the main highway to get to the property. You take a dirt road. Well, that dirt road runs for probably like 10 miles, but it kind of encapsulates part of the property. It basically makes a big D and connects back to the highway. But we were only going to walk a few of that. We didn't want to be out too late. I think that was on maybe a Saturday evening. No, it was a Sunday evening. Because we had to go to work the next morning. We worked together. We lived together, worked together. You'd think we were married. Anyways, so we start walking this road. Everything's fine. We're kind of just being observant. Fast forward into the night, we get to a certain point, and I just kind of had this really uneasy feeling. In working in corrections, you'll learn to always trust your gut. If you didn't trust it in the woods, you'll learn to trust it when every single day the people that are locked up could hurt you. So I just kind of had turned around. I was like, hey, I think we've gone far enough. So we turned around, and right as we turn around, it's like, it's dark. Like it had just really became dark. So Jacob was walking in front of me, and I had noticed he was probably about 50 yards ahead of me. We kind of wanted to be a little bit spread out. He's about 50 yards in front of me, and we're walking now due south. We had been going north. Now we turned around. We were coming back due south. So that means the river is on our left side, so it's to the east of us. But it's a sharp, steep, 15 to 20 foot embankment down to the river. And the one thing you'll have to know about Northwest Arkansas, or pretty much anywhere in Arkansas, is you're part of the Ozark Mountains and the plateau. So there's like 6 inches of dirt and then rock, and that's pretty much it. So it's very rocky out here, very sharp and jagged rock. So we're walking, and there's kind of a small little berm, I'd probably say about 1 foot high, that kind of just so in case a car gets going off one way, it might be able to have time to correct. So we're kind of walking what would be on the left side of the road, and the river's right there down there to our left. Yeah, we're walking the left side of the road, river's to our left. I noticed he's about 50 yards in front of me, and he kind of did a really sharp and hard jerk motion to his left and flipped on his light. And so I, immediately in my head, I'm like, what was that? Jacob doesn't get startled easy, so something must have triggered his fight or flight right then and there. And he's very good about light discipline, especially in mock exercises. Light works both ways. It can illuminate the thing you're trying to find, and it can also illuminate you. So we're both very good about when we use it, when we don't use it. He turns his light off and just keeps walking forward. So I'm like, okay, must have not been anything. Well, I can't really tell where he was at. I just happened to just see it, and then I kind of turned back to my left, and I'm still walking. I'm kind of following in his footsteps. And he never shouted or said a word. And I kind of was walking past, and I think I'd actually passed by about 10 yards where he had seen this thing. And I got this just like turn around right now, like sense, like just a sense of dread. And I turned to my left and I shined my light. And what I saw was odd. It still kind of spooks me to this day. But I'll finish the story, then I'll tell you. So I see this thing, I turn off my light, and I keep following Jacob. It seemed like we both kind of understood something was wrong, so we start kind of hightailing it to the truck. Not running, not really jogging, but kind of really picked up pace. We get to the truck, throw our gear in it, drive the 30-minute drive home in complete silence. Pull into the parking lot. We lived in an apartment. And before I got out of the truck, I said, "Did you see what I saw?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "What was it?" And he goes, "I have no idea." And I got on my phone. I typed in white, flat, Native American face. and was scrolling through the picture, and I think I added mask onto that. And I scrolled down and I found a picture. And I turned it around and I said, "Is this what you saw?" He said, "Yep." So basically what we saw was a flat, like it was almost just like a circle, flat with almost no features, and then just black eyes with a black frowny face, basically. And that was it. There was no other details to it. There was no body to it. Nothing. But it was like probably 3 foot high in between two bushes. I have no idea what it was. I know that it wasn't there when we went back. I know that there's not anybody that's going to be out here at this property doing this. Because if there was, you would have been able to tell it was a person. I mean, there's just no way. It was basically like just in between two bushes, but when I shined my light, you could see to the left and right, and you could kind of see above it, but you couldn't see below it. It was like black was absorbing the light. Didn't say anything, didn't make a noise or anything. It just like, we just saw it and we wanted to leave. And I know it wasn't a person in a mask laying on the side of the road waiting to scare us. There's just nobody that's going to be out there that does this. This road is fairly uninhabited, and we get along with everybody there. So and then why would you try to scare somebody that you know is walking around with loaded firearms? You know what I mean? Like, we both have good trigger discipline, and we would never shoot anything unintentionally, ever. But that's just not a good move, if that is what that was. And we've never seen it again. But we both know what we saw. And I said, okay, cool. So we're both extremely religious. So we both pray, we're demanding that it not follow us into our house. And we slept fine that evening. But that was just a very odd encounter. That was in 2021. So that was, I don't know what it was, but it spooked me quite a bit.
Have you ever heard of the rake creature before, Cody?
Is that isn't it like a tall creature of some kind?
I don't know if it's tall. I'm going to show you a picture here. Besides the glowing eyes in this picture, is this what it looked like you saw?
Almost to a T. So there was no body, but it was basically that face, but completely. It was almost like if you looked into, like a Scream mask. Okay, it was like those eyes where they were black, and then the face was just. It wasn't really frowning, but it was just kind of a sedentary face. But there was no lip shape. It was just like a hole. But yeah, the shape and everything kind of is close to that.
I don't know if that's what people are seeing and calling skinwalkers. I kind of want to relate those two together.
I think that what I saw was a skinwalker, something in shape shifting area.
And this is on that same,
and it was actually not on the same property line per se, but it was probably only about 200 yards off the property line.
So what do you think's going on with that stuff? I mean, do you think that's this Indian burial ground thing? Do you think that's real? Do you think these?
Oh, I think that it has everything to do with. I think it has everything to do with it. To be completely honest with you, and I say that first encounter was a dog man, but it honestly could have been a skinwalker, something that had. Because a skinwalker, I think, is a medicine man.
For sure.
And I think that that could have been also what that was, but I'm not sure. But whatever that first one was, it absorbed every ounce of light that I shot at it. That second thing, it didn't have a body attached to it. It didn't seem. It seemed like it was almost like it was pushed through the bushes almost. Obviously, I've gone back before. There's no, I went back the very next morning actually. And there was nothing on the roadway. There was nothing in the bush. There was, nothing like that. And it was like, you could tell it was attached to something else. It was just, you could feel that. Like it was an entity of some kind. It wasn't a prop put there. It wasn't, anything like that. You could tell. And again, to startle Jacob, you got to be pretty scary. He's a pretty solid dude. So we'll move on to a next encounter. So this next encounter basically is multiple encounters in a row that are about 6 months apart pretty much every time. So and I will also say that whenever the university or whoever came out to dig, the gentleman had a small crop patch there on that same side of the river. It died within the days following that incident. Like the nutrients had been sucked straight out of the ground, and it had gotten hit with 200-degree heat. It was dead. So I like to do bow hunting over there because it's probably a little unsafe because if I shot a deer and it ran across the road, it could hit a car. But typically they don't make it very far. But there is in the corner of this property, there is a strip that kind of looks like an isosceles triangle that kind of borders the road, but is also his property. And then there's a field, obviously behind me, my back, which would be the field that all this weird stuff happens in. That's kind of close to the road, and then behind that is the river, and behind that on the other side of the river is the big field that I saw the big black creature. So I'm facing west into the sun. I have this one particular spot I like to sit. There's a small, 3-foot deep drainage that's in front of me that the deer will come off the neighbor property, jump the fence, go under another fence, and they walk that bottom, or they lay up kind of on this little rise in front of me about 40 yards, and then the highway is another 100 yards away. I was sitting there one day. It was an evening hunt. I had gotten off of work. I was working as an archery technician, so I was, building bows, customizing bows for people for a pretty reputable shop in our area. Guy said, "Hey, you want to go hunt this evening?" I said, "Yes, please." He said, "Get out of here." I said, "Okay." So I grabbed my bow off the rack, run to the truck, throw my bow in the front seat, drive out to the property. It's about a 30-minute drive from where I was. I get there probably right at 45 minutes till dark. It's almost kind of one of those, is it worth it type of things. But any chance I get, I try to bow hunt as much as I can. And I always do carry some kind of a pistol with me for any kind of instance, whether it be human or animal alike. I'm a big Second Amendment believer. Anyways, so I'm sitting and I've got about 5 yards worth of brush behind me to the field. And sometimes they'll come out in that little corner of that field and I could try to turn around and get a shot right behind me. So I've got enough brush there, but I can see through it. But if you were on the other side, you couldn't see me. So I'm sitting facing west, and everything was still. Again, no birds, nothing. And I'm like, oh, great. I was already that's not good. Well, I'm like, well, here come 3 deer from the north on a beeline straight for me. And these are big deer. I'm like, wow, those are really big deer for this area. And they're walking straight towards me, a single file line. And when I say they almost acted animatronic, I mean it. They walked funny. They didn't really act like deer. They almost seemed kind of robotic. Or at least the one in front did. And then it got probably I'd say 60 yards from this fence line. Maybe it could have been 40. And I'm pretty good with distance. I shoot bows a lot. Probably close to 300 arrows every day. Up until recently. So I know distance. So I said between 40 and 50 yards from this fence line. The first deer stops. And it doesn't, deer will sniff. They'll throw their snout up in the air and they'll sniff around. If they are catching your wind, that's typically what they'll do. If they can smell you low and they get a low draft, they'll stick their nose low and they'll bob their head kind of like a dog does. And they'll snap left and right because their eyes are positioned semi in front, and to the side. So they can they have a decent range of vision. That deer didn't do any of this. It stood there, and then all the deer simultaneously shifted the other direction and came back exactly where they came from. They didn't bob their head. They didn't sniff the air. It was like they hit a brick wall. It was like in a video game. If a character hits like a brick wall and then it just turns around and starts walking exactly, it was like a Roomba. Like it was so odd. And they just walked away. Well, about 5 minutes after that, I could hear crunching of leaves. Like something stepping. But I'm looking, and where all the leaves are, I can see. I've got a field behind me and woods in front of me, but those woods, I can see the end of the woods on the other side. But these steps, they sounded like they were right in my ear. They sounded like they were right here, like I was wearing headphones, which freaked me out. I'm like looking all around. I looked like I was schizophrenic. I'm like looking around. I'm looking behind me and above me, and I could not tell where this is coming from. So I was just like, I'm getting out of here. I'm getting the hell out of here. I stand up. I start walking back to the truck. A rabbit comes out of the brush, and I'm like, oh, that's what I was hearing. He was back here playing. Well, the closer I got to the rabbit, it wouldn't move. And then it'd move a little bit, and I'd walk towards my truck a little bit more, and it was like it was going towards my truck. And then eventually it went past my truck, and it stayed there. So I'm like, I get in my truck. At the time, I was driving an F-150. It was pretty loud. I turned the truck on, and I kind of revved the engine at it to see if it'd move, and it wouldn't move. So I put it into gear, and I start driving towards this rabbit, and it keeps hopping, and then it shot off to the brush. And I'm like, okay, well, whatever. I was like, that's just weird. I get out, drive home. I come back, probably, and I was like, I didn't have time. I think I have other places to hunt, so I went and I hunted those places. Now this is upcoming following year of 22. Same thing happens. I go out there one time, almost the exact same thing happens, but no deer, but no birds, no nothing. But I hear those same crunching footsteps and get the kind of that overwhelming fear of like I'm being watched and I'm not meant to be here. So I leave. 2023 happens, and this is kind of the final straw for me. Same thing. Hey, you want to get out here and go hunt? Absolutely. Took the opportunity, darted over there. I get sat down. I was actually working for a local camo company at the time. And I get the opportunity to leave to go hunt. I took it. I get there. I get sat down. I'm not there 5 minutes. Not 5 minutes. And when I came on that property that day, I'll never forget how fearful I was. And not from the previous stuff happening, but it was like as soon as I entered the gate, this overwhelming feel of dread came over me. None like I'd ever had before from an encounter. And like I felt like I was having to push through a brick wall to get on this property. Like I was being physically held back almost. So I get to my spot, I sit down, immediate. I can hear the footsteps, but they are so loud and in my ears. I'm like, F this, I'm leaving. So I'm running. I have a bow in my hand. I carry like a chest pack from Hill People Gear. Love it. If you don't have one, buy one. They're the greatest thing ever. So I've got my gun in that. Well, it had just gotten dark. I pull my gun out of it. I have my gun light on. I'm running to my truck with a gun light on. I throw my bow, which is like a $2,000 bow. I huck it into the bed of my truck. Get in, start the truck. I say it's dark. It's right at twilight. If you didn't know, deer are considered crepuscular. Don't know if you know that word or not. It's my favorite word ever. It means it's active during the dusk and dawn. So I get in the truck. I go open the gate. Same rabbits there, and it does the same thing every single time I'm there. Goes into this piece of brush. I open the gate, go through the gate. I get out, close the gate. But right as I'm getting in my truck, a crow flies out of the ground. Not a bush, out of the ground. I can see where this crow came out of the ground. And let me rephrase. People have told me it's a crow. I know 100% that it was not a crow. It is a raven. I know what they look like. I know the difference. This thing was so big. I mean, there's no, and I know a crow kind of has a smaller a beak, and they don't have the big ridge on the top. This was a raven, not a crow. It's sitting on this bush, or on this limb, and it is looking right, and it flew out of the ground. I watched it fly out of the ground. It sits on this branch. I get in my truck. I'm like, nope, we're getting out of here. I hit the gas, come around the corner, just kind of out of the little driveway, and I start picking up speed. This raven flies out of this tree, and it is flying 10 yards out of my driver's window, looking at me while it is flying. It has its head turned, looking to its right, and I'm looking at it. I'm driving 45 miles an hour down a dirt road, and it is keeping pace with me. Almost effortlessly, looking at me in the face as I'm driving away. I'm staring at it, and I'm like looking at the road, and I look at it, and I'm looking, and it never broke contact with my truck. I get to the property line, it turns, kind of does a upward motion, and flies right back where it came from. I'm looking at the rearview mirror, and I can't find it. Never have I ever gone back, and will I never go back. So I call my best friend of a number of years. I call him my little brother. We've been together, been friends, probably close to 16 years at this point. I go on vacations with his family. Whenever he graduated Marine Corps, I flew out to California with his family. So he's my little brother. Well, I call Madre. They're Hispanic, so I'm their little white boy. And I said, I said, Madre, I said, this is what happened. And, they're part native from Mexico. And I said, this happened. She goes, Mijo, never, ever, ever go back in that field ever again. And I said, why? She goes, you don't want to. She said, that was a final warning. She said, that was it escorting you off the property and telling you to never come back. And I've never gone back in that field since. I'll go across and I'll hunt on the other side of the river because technically they were sold together as property, but they're not really like the same piece of property. Especially because it crosses a water source. I've heard that matters. So I feel relatively okay on the other side. Again, I just hunt. Now I don't even hunt with a bolt gun anymore, like a bolt action rifle. I hunt with an AR anyway, and have great success with it. I found a round that actually does really good. I have a couple of buddies who are in the Naval Special Warfare, and I actually use the round that they use, and it'll drop a deer where it stands. So I use that, and so I feel pretty confident because I hunt with like a little 10-round magazine. We don't have magazine restrictions in the state that I'm from as far as for hunting deer. You don't need much more than that, but they don't make anything smaller than that. So, and I only typically fill it up about halfway, so about 5 rounds. I still want to feel kind of sportsmanlike, and I just think it's more utilitarian because I can shoot a coyote with it. And it's not just going to blow it away. I can shoot a deer; it'll do enough damage to kill it, and then I can shoot other things, if they need to be shot. So, and we do have bobcat out there. We toyed around with the whole eye shine idea being a bobcat when I realized, well, the eye was probably the same size as a bobcat head. I kid you not. Whenever we did go back and we were thinking about it, those eyes. Whenever we were doing the height test. Actual, I had some polarized sunglasses with me that I put on whenever he was shining that light, and his light on what he was using was probably around close to 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches in diameter, and the eyes were bigger than that itself. So I know that the eyes were probably close to 3 inches wide in that first encounter. But I've had some other stuff happen too, but that's on that property. That's kind of the only things that I've had happen, which has been several. But yeah, just some really weird stuff that I cannot explain other than, everything was fine, pretty much until they started trying to dig.
Maybe there's something to this Indian burial.
Oh man, I'm shaking right now. Just having to to tell every one of those encounters has me pretty shook up. But
I got some serious goosebumps on a couple of those.
Oh man, and I actually don't think that's the first that first encounter with that what we think is a dog man. I actually think that I've had another one with the same creature, but kind of in passing, and I think I caught it. I don't know what its intentions were, but we had something thump the bottom of the blind one night. While me and another friend were staying out there, something, you can touch it. I mean, anybody could go over there and pound on it, but something thumped it pretty good one time. And whenever I went out, I kind of saw something go into the woods, but I was never able to determine what it was.
So you don't go back there and hunt anymore?
I do on the big field where I did see the dog man. I still go over there, even though I'm out before dark. If I'm by myself, I leave before dark. I typically only go there to morning hunt, so I'll walk in the dark, but I walk in as close to daylight as possible. And when I go, I have, a Glock 17, so 17 rounds in my magazine there, a spare one, 30 round mag in my chest, and then a 10 rounder in the gun. Not that I don't think that you could kill it with that. I really don't. If it is a flesh and blood creature, I still don't think that you could kill it with just that ammunition. I really don't. If it makes me feel better, it makes me feel better.
You gotta have protection no matter where, or anything in the woods.
Well, I've actually been shot at by a neighbor one time before, me and a buddy. So, I'm not looking for it to be the Hatfield McCoys, but I will defend myself.
Something with eyes. You were talking about the eyes being 14 inches apart. Can you just imagine in 3 inches in diameter? Can you imagine the size of this thing's head?
Well, that's one of the things that it was so black. It literally looked like somebody was hanging a black bed sheet from 8 foot tall. That was just, and like I said, my light is so powerful. But if you don't have a magnified optic though, at 250 yards, you're going to be hard pressed to find detail. And the other thing is in the field where I had the noises happen, with the sounding like footsteps, my phone would drain of batteries so fast over there, it was unreal. I'd have to go there with a mobile charger just to stay 45 minutes. So that's something to consider as well.
Yeah, we've heard that before too. Batteries, all your equipment drains down. Something is going on in these areas. There's some strangeness to it that we just don't know. We just don't understand.
Yeah. I had if we've got time, I don't know what your time looks like. I've got one more encounter that I'd like to share with you.
All right, go ahead.
I got married to my ex-wife in 2019, and we moved in with her parents. I think we were both like 21 years old. So, no money, broke, it is what it is. And they have a house out on Beaver Lake. I won't say where. Obviously, just because of what happened, I want to give them their privacy at this time anyway. But it is it's out in the boonies. Now they do have neighbors, but it's, they're kind of far and few between. And it's just kind of in a place where it's densely wooded very close to there. But I was sitting on their porch one night. We actually had several instances where throughout the night, the motion light outside of our bedroom would go off a lot and whatnot. I think it's because I was there and I was new, and the Bigfoot didn't like it. But I know it was a Bigfoot because I was sitting on the porch one morning. I was drinking coffee. She had gone to work early. I was getting ready to go into work. It was a Saturday. Both of her parents were gone as well, but not like this. Now, I'm sitting there and I kind of got this odd sense like, hey, I'm being watched. And I was like, this was kind of one of my first ever experiences with anything supernatural like that. But I'm like, hey, I feel like I'm being watched. It's kind of weird, whatever. And I heard like an old man sitting down in a chair, but just really gruffy. I was like, oh, what the hell was that? And I'm kind of like looking up the hill, and I'm like, that's weird. I'm looking. I hear it again, a little bit louder. And all of a sudden, I get a rock about that big thrown onto the deck. And I'm like, oh, yeah, no, we're not playing that game. So I run out to the back, and I'm running to my truck because I want to see if I can see this thing. And sure enough, going right over the top of the hill, reddish brown, dark brown figures just kind of, I could see just the top of the head go over the other side of the hill. And it was conical in shape. I never smelt anything, but I was like, I know exactly what that was. No doubt in my mind. We had other instances where, that light would come off and on numerous times throughout the night. But that one, that motion light that would come on is actually mounted so high. It's kind of above our window, and our window was probably right at 11 foot at the center of the window. And that light was mounted right above it, but a raccoon, deer, anything like that wouldn't set this one in particular light off because of how it was mounted. I mean, it was mounted for if you walked right underneath the window. And it would go off pretty frequently. So I think something was there either trying to peer in at us or it was playing around with us doing but it didn't seem like it was trying to be aggressive. It was trying to, because if it wanted to be aggressive, it could have thrown it right at me. But it was kind of throwing it kind of at the steps of the deal. And so I think that it was just saying, hey, you're new here. I want to let you know I'm here.
Cody, we want to thank you for being here today, man. Great stories, great encounters.
Yeah, those were awesome.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. If I hear anything else or see anything else, I'll give you guys an update.
Definitely get a hold of us.
Yeah, we'd appreciate it.
Be safe out there.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
Be safe out there.
Mm-hmm. We'll do.
All right, Cody.
All right, thanks again, buddy. We'll talk to you later.
Have a good one.
See ya.
Bye.
Great encounters having Cody on, man. Those are really intense,
good.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It's crazy how more and more people are seeing both creatures now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no. I don't know if it's because there's more, we're just encroaching more into their habitats.
Or they're populating more.
Or they're sexing more. One of the two.
They're sexing more, that's right. Them Bigfoots and Dogmans are sexing it up out there.
That's right.
Keep on going. We want to see one. Bigfoot, not Dogman.
Either one, that's fine. Just as long as the Dogman's like way over there.
Yeah, let's stay in his territory. We're good.
That's right.
Listeners, thanks you guys for listening, as always. We appreciate you.
We appreciate the hell out of you. Thank you so much.
Brother, I appreciate you. Be sure to check out our website, cryptidcreatures.net. We got a great load of members episodes on there you guys can check out. Appreciate you all. Thanks again. Brian, great hanging out with you, brother.
Always fun, brother. Always learning.
All right, let's take off, man.
Yep. See ya.